So welcome everybody to the Punched podcast, where yours truly has a lot to say about nothing. We are on episode 7. I think I said episode 5 twice in a row, so just letting you know we are back on track with the correct numbering of the episodes. So literally right before I sat down to do this, there is a leak on the Xbox Series X controllers. So I guess we're going to be starting off this week, or this half of the month, I don't know, with the leak of that controller. It's pretty much the same thing as the Xbox One controller. It's just a little bit thicker. And the one that's circulating right now on Twitter is a white one. I'm more than positive they'll have a black one as well. But more than anything, like, the most predominant thing for me that's standing out is the fact that it's USB-C, which, fuck yeah, thank you. And there's like a hybrid D-pad. There's a picture like going around everywhere. You can definitely check this out. You can definitely look this up. Like, I've been using Twitter specifically, but if you look it up on Google, more than positive, it'll pop up. There's a picture of the box, the side of the box, the controller itself, and it looks pretty decent. It just looks like a little bit more of a refined version of whatever we're already used to. And I'm not like an Xbox player, so I can't really say that. But if you're an Xbox player, I'd like to hear, I don't know, what you have to say about it. And since we're on the topic of Xbox, we can talk about the Halo Infinite gameplay. There's a couple of things that were announced during the Xbox thing, so predominantly, that's like the third time I already said it within like the last 5 minutes, 2 minutes. I don't even know how long we've been recording already. I'm kind of scatterbrained right now, but when aren't I at the very beginning of every podcast, you feel? The Halo Infinite gameplay. I don't want to call it whack. I don't want to call it like bad or anything, because I'm definitely excited. The open world aspect looks awesome. It sounds awesome, and I might be holding too much of a, what's it called, like, expectations for being able to explore the ring itself, like the whole Halo. But my mind would be blown if that's what the open world was. Like, if we could go up and like on a ship and just go directly across the map type deal and go to another part of the Halo, or just go completely upwards or completely downwards to get to the next point type deal, that would be nuts. But that's me being hopeful, that's me being excited, that's me just shooting out ideas, because I have no idea whether or not they're going to be doing that. So I know there's a lot of like commentary on how like whack the graphics were, and I guess that's why I started with that word. I don't want to call it whack, or with that phrasing. It's not that it looks bad, it's just not there for the next generation that they're pushing. The cutscenes are cool. I'm very much enjoying the pilot that's driving Master Chief around, and I like the gameplay loop that they showed. So you kind of traversed like this whole little area with a bunch of enemies, and you had to go up to a tower, kind of like every open world, right? And had to do some crap with the tower. There's a grappling hook that is going to help definitely with mobility and stuff if you don't have vehicles. And almost like right off the bat, as soon as you get onto the Halo, or at least during the demo, you can drive a warthog, so I'm happy that there's still warthogs. And I'm sure that this has been talked to death already, so I'll go ahead and digress. But what I will say is that it looks promising. There's something missing, though. I'm interested, it's got my attention, but it doesn't have my full-on excitement. Like, I'm very, well, with every game, I'm very skeptical with my expectations. I definitely set them at a very reasonable place, like at a reasonable bar, you get me? With Halo Infinite, I'm doing the same exact thing. Like, I'm hopeful, I like it. It just feels like it lacks oomph. I know that there's a lot of conversations going around on how the weapons themselves don't sound correctly, or they just don't sound good. and they don't. If you go in the watch the Xbox reveal thing, it wasn't that umphy. There really is another word that doesn't feel heavy. It doesn't feel like impactful. There we go. That's the correct word. That's the right word. Other than that, all I'm really excited for is Stalker 2. That looks pretty dope. I don't know, was it in the Xbox one? Correct me if I'm wrong, but they showed gameplay for like the Medium, which is that game that takes place in 2 dimensions, 2 worlds type deal. That looks pretty decent. Oh, and of course the reveal for Fable. I know it was only like 30 seconds long, but it had the tone down for sure. It definitely felt like I was watching the opening to a new Fable game. I'd love to see more. I'm excited for more. But like every game, like everything that's being shown right now from Xbox and PlayStation, I'm going to be as skeptical as possible until we see gameplay. And even then, I'll keep all of my expectations in check until I get my hands on it myself. So I guess I'll digress on Xbox and we can move on over to the state of play, because that happened a little bit more recently, and I'm like more than positive you guys have been talked to death by Xbox. The way this podcast works, as you guys probably already know, I wait a couple of weeks in between each episode just so that I could get some stuff done, just so that I can get enough information, if that makes sense, just have enough to talk about, because then otherwise I'd just be talking about whatever I've been watching or whatever I've been gaming on. Like that is a part of the show. It's just I don't want it to be the only thing. And I have a lot to talk about UFC later, so hopefully you guys stick around. But let's talk about the state of play. All right, I'm just gonna go ahead and say Crash 4 looks awesome. I'm very much on board with what they've shown. They're saying there won't be any microtransactions, but seeing all of the cool interchangeable costumes that they have doesn't give me hope for them to not have any microtransactions after release, because they said it with Crash Team Racing, and then look what happened there, you feel? So as much as I am excited for it, there are a couple of things that I'm kind of like, yeesh, oh, yo, I don't know. But the gameplay looks dope. It just looks like an elevated version of stuff that we've played, and I feel like that's the reason they did the remakes, so that they knew what the hell to do. Like, they needed to get the feel for Crash again. And one of the highlighted aspects in the demo or the trailer thing for Crash 4 was highlighting the gameplay of, like, you know, doing a 2D, 3D, like, going in and out, like, forward of the screen and outside of the screen, and, like, doing stuff upside down. And there's, like, a new inverted mode that looks really dope, where it's, like, you're going backwards. And again, despite them saying there won't be microtransactions, there's a part of me that wants to believe, because with everything that they've shown us, it's like they're giving us incentive to complete the game so that we can get whatever costumes or whatever other modes that they have in it. But yeah, Crash has always been a staple to the PlayStation family. It's always been a staple to my family personally. It's one of mine and my brother's favorite games ever. The whole series, actually, and my cousin, come to think of it, that was one of the games that all 3 of us would sit there and just mind melt us for hours. You know, I think about that a lot, where I was a kid that would beat these platformers that were notoriously difficult, but now when I go back to them as an adult, I'm kind of like, oh, fuck this, dude, it's so hard. That's so damn hard, dude. And this one looks pretty difficult, but like in a really, really good way. I'm very much digging the narrative as well, like the reintroduction of Dingodile and seeing what he's been up to since the last game. I love that they're completely ignoring everything after Crash 3. They're like, yeah, no, we're just gonna go back to the stuff that's actually good. You know, the stuff that Naughty Dog did. And that's no dig at Crash Twinsanity, because that was also one of my favorites. But Naughty Dog knocked it out of the park with every time they went out with that Bandicoot. So, I mean, like, to say the very least, I'm excited. We'll see how it ends up being. It's not too far away. I think it's coming out this year, so that'll be fun to get my hands on. Another sequel is Hitman 3 that's coming out. It looks again like an elevation of what we've gotten with the previous 2 Hitman games, but the VR mode, bro, it looks so dope. It looks like it's gonna elevate the difficulty, and it's going to like open up this whole new set of problems for you to deal with as Agent 47. Like, I'm not a huge VR person, and there's actually a lot of VR stuff in State of Play in general, but Hitman 3 for me is what actually makes me want to get a VR, headset and stuff. I mean, aside Half-Life Alyx, but that wasn't mentioned at all, obviously, because it's PlayStation. I'm not like the biggest Hitman fan in the world, but I'm glad to see that the series is still continuing, that it has enough of a fan base for them to even implement a VR mode. And me being a dude who likes Metal Gear, it's really hard for me to not acknowledge how well Hitman does stealth. Hitman does the variety of gameplay for you to complete the objective type deal. And I'm just hella excited to see what they're gonna do with part 3. I know I keep saying excited this podcast. I gotta calm down, dude. I actually need to go back and listen to myself and tally up every time I hear myself repeating whatever phrases and whatnot, because I do have a tendency of leaning back on mannerisms. You get me? Like or not mannerisms, but like speaking patterns, like little phrases that I can like fall back on that I just push out whenever I'm not ready to say something correctly or give enough insight on something. But yo, let's chill. Let's get back to video games, right? So Braid Anniversary, it's literally just a better version of the OG game. There's a video game commentary though, and that's what stood out to me. I don't think I've ever heard of a video game commentary like that, and I've definitely not heard of a developer being adamant about telling you how they made their game. Like, I'm really hoping that this becomes a norm for video games, because that sells, you get me? Like, a lot of people do love hearing about that stuff, the minutia, the quote-unquote boring stuff that they might think isn't interesting, but to us it's like, that's exactly what the hell we want to know about. I, like, did write down stuff for, like, pretty much every game during the State of Play, so I guess I'll be talking about every single one briefly as possible. The next one being The Fallen. It's that one game with the bird and that one hunter chick. She's like all in red. It has a very distinct art style, and with the open world gameplay that we saw during the State of Play, as well as the traversal of it all and how fluid and direction based the shooting is, as opposed to aiming down the sights, really gives the world and the game a certain feel. Now I can't really say much because obviously I haven't played it, but it does look fluid. It does look very easy to move around, to traverse, to get into. If you like exploring, I feel like the movement for this game just lends itself to that. And I was definitely getting Breath of the Wild vibes for sure. There's another tower in the gameplay for this one, and they had to do some stuff, and you get to fly with your bird and whatnot. But it all culminates in this like boss battle. And that boss is like an evil spirit or whatever. There's like this whole duality thing with the game where you have to like use vantage points, like high up vantage points, to be able to see into the spirit world and see where you gotta go. And I don't know if they made this clear within the trailer, but I think that monster, whatever it is that you fight, is from that spirit world, or you have to like use the vision to like take it down. But it felt like a full-on action sequence, like from a movie. It felt like a cutscene almost, just with how like fast you're moving and running and keeping up with this like gigantic ass beast and just like shooting arrows like it's nothing. It looks like you're going to feel like you have a ton of a finesse. Finesse. I can't even like say words when I get overly hyped about games. And it's not even so much that I'm hyped for the game, but I was hyped for that sequence. It was super dope. After that, there's like a full thing for like Spelunky 2. They're doing a lot with the gameplay. I kind of checked out at that point. I was like on my phone and stuff. Genshin Impact looks like another JRPG with open world. The only thing that stood out to me was the fact that you could climb on stuff like Breath of the Wild, but I doubt it'll be an open world game, and I doubt it'll have aspects of Breath of the Wild. What it really has going for it is the aesthetic, but what other JRPG doesn't have that going for it? The one that stood out to me afterwards, though, was like Aeon Must Die, or Aeon? Is it Aeon Must Die? It's Aon. So that's just how I'm gonna say it. But the art, how do you even explain the art? It looks futuristic and impactful, like the font impact, if that makes sense, but not necessarily. It's very ineffable, honestly. It's a 2D side scrolling beat 'em up type deal, or at least that's what it seems like. That's what they're going for. But I'm excited because of how dope the art is and how the gameplay seems to mesh with that art style. But I don't think it was necessarily a gameplay trailer. It was more like, hey, here's a bunch of stuff from this world. There's another game called Anno Mutationum, which is another one that's like a linear beat 'em up. There's like parts of it where you move horizontal and vertically through the environment type deal. There's like platforming sections, but I was definitely not as excited for that game as I was for Aeon Must Die. And since we're on like an indie tangent, we can just keep on talking about the indie games because they did talk about a few other of the bigger ones, but they did show some stuff for a grid chess battle game with goblins. It's called like Auto Chess or something like that. I wasn't too intrigued by it, not gonna lie. The one after that is the one that got my attention because you're like the stick figure walking around in these drawings, like literally like on a fridge or outside or whatever it is, and you go to other pages, you move to other drawings. Like the gameplay is you solving those quote unquote puzzles, so it's kind of like a puzzle platformer type deal. It reminds me of that game, I think it was called Echo, that was on the PlayStation 3 is like one of the very first things to show off how awesome the PlayStation 3 is. Just an updated, a really cool, advanced version of it. And I don't know if you guys considered Temtem as an indie release. I think it is. I guess you would consider it. But Temtem's coming to the PS5. That's going to be awesome. I know it's on the PC right now. I have yet to play it. I doubt I will anytime soon. But even when it does come to the PS5, I'm probably going to play it on a PC anyway. And if you guys don't know what Temtem is, it's essentially the competitor to Pokemon now because of how adorable all of the little Temtem are. And there's a lot of like ease of use stuff. It just seems like an elevated, dang dude, literally all of these games are just elevated, quote unquote elevated versions, like souped up versions of games we've played before. At some point, what is the point? Like at what point do we say, I've seen it? And let me tell you, I don't think that point ever comes. I mean, video games are dope. Who cares if there's similarities between them? I mean, we do like stuff that stands out. We do like new mechanics, and I do love innovative gameplay. But there's only so much they can do with all these games. It's really about the settings and how fun the games are themselves. But I'll go ahead and digress on my little tangent here. We'll talk about Bugsnax and Godfall before we move on. But okay, so Bugsnax actually doesn't look all that awful after seeing this next trailer, because there's a lot of trap gameplay where you put like traps down to capture the Bugsnax. It seems a lot more open world and interactive because there are actual NPCs within the game that it looks like that's who are going to be giving you quests and whatnot. And then at the very end of the trailer, there's like this flying pizza monster that was all loud with like rain and whatever it is. They try to make it look super gloomy and hella ominous. What I'm trying to say is like Bugsnax I was writing off for sure. I only even paid attention to the game before because of Caro Bonito, the band that did the music for the reveal trailer. And now I'm kind of like, hey, you guys might have something on your hands here. Kind of looks like a way better version of that Slime Rancher game. We'll see. So Godfall. We'll go ahead and end on Godfall before talking about UFC, or I might even talk about in fact I will talk about how I've been like working out hella and on keto, but we'll do that right before we get into UFC. Godfall. Okay, so they're specifically selling this, quote unquote selling this as a looter slasher. And I didn't understand what the hell they were talking about. I had no idea what the hell they were like trying to tell me by saying that. But after seeing the gameplay and after seeing a couple of the classes or whatever, I'm intrigued, to say the very least. It doesn't seem too bare bones in terms of like combos and slashing, and it doesn't seem like all that repetitive. There's a lot of variety within the one class type deal that when you go to play another one, there's distinct changes in the gameplay. Like it feels like you're playing whatever class that they showed. They're saying there's going to be a total of 5, and aside the special combos and quote unquote actual specials that each class has, like all of the weapons themselves have like a primary and secondary trait type deal. And honestly, now that I've said it, like the more I talk about it, it kind of feels like it's going to be like a Diablo-esque game where you get a crap ton of loot and find and implement whatever it is you get, and it'll feel like a difference. It'll feel like you're doing more damage. So I'll definitely be keeping an eye on it for sure. At first, I definitely thought it was going to be another Warframe-esque game. But it seems like they're going for their own thing. But I'm actually excited to hear what you guys have to say, what you guys are, looking out for. I know what I'm excited for. I know what I'm looking at. And again, I'm going to keep all my expectations in check. There weren't like any groundbreaking reveals. So I'm just kind of like, with my expectations on like every game right now. And well, PlayStation said that to begin with, right? Like, we're going to have a bunch of indie and VR stuff, and there's not going to be anything huge, so expect that. And I did, and I am, and pretty much everything that I thought it was going to be. Now, before we get into UFC and catching up on all of the stuff that's happened, because have I even talked about Till and Whitaker? So not only do we need to talk about Darren Till and Robert Whitaker, we also have to talk about the whole fight night with Edmund Shabazian and Derek Brunson. And then on top of that, flipping Derek Lewis, the Black Beast, coming through with like an awesome knockout, dude. The guy's actually flipping scary, and he's so much taller than I thought he was. But let's run it back a couple weeks to the fight night with our boys Robert Whitaker and Darren Till, and then we'll end with like personal stuff like keto and all that, or I can just like wait till next time depending on how long this podcast goes. But I'm just so excited for UFC because that card with Robert Whitaker and Darren Till was like insane. It was super stacked. It was a lot of fun to watch. So Hamza Chimaev, which is like this dude who had fought a week and a half prior, came through and completely destroyed some random nobody that I'd never heard about, and the guy that he had fought the week and a half prior also wasn't that high up. He is new to the UFC, but that doesn't make him any less exciting, especially because he's so about it. He just wants to fight so bad. He's like, hell yeah, man, I'm good right now, give me the next one, I'm ready for the next one. Like, this guy even flew to Ireland to be like, yo, I want to beat up Conor McGregor. And if you guys don't know about UFC, Conor McGregor is like the biggest draw, one of the biggest names. And that's because he talks a lot of crap and he can back it up really well. He's only lost a couple of times to pretty capable fighters. So for this new young blood to come out and be like, hey, I'm calling you out, and even literally flies over to his country to do it, I think that's pretty insane. I want to see where this guy ends up. I want to see where this Chimaev, or Khabib 2.0 as they're calling him, ends up. Now, I could talk about this whole card, but I don't think I'm going to. I'll probably glance over like every fight type deal because we have other cards to get to. I just want to say that the Alex Oliveira cat at welterweight has a very weird fighting style, has a very like open like stance. There we go. I was thinking about the word. I actually had to cut out like a good 30 seconds just now because I was like, wait, what the hell am I talking about? Yeah, he has a weird like open stance, and it's like very goofy, very funky, and he ended up winning like through decision. It did go all 3 rounds, but there were other finishes for that night. So Paul Craig came through and submitted. I actually don't know who Antigulov is. I'm not gonna lie to you, but this Paul Craig guy has won a couple of his last fights, and he's looking pretty good at the light heavyweight. There are a bunch of contenders at light heavyweight currently, and he looks exciting. So we'll see. I'm like more than positive this is the Canadian dude. Or wait, flipping, not Canadian, Scottish. There you go, might be. Why did I think Canada? I think it was because like the red or whatever. I don't know. I'm dumb. But this guy, he looks pretty decent. We'll see how it is. Carla Esparza, which is more than positive. I think she was a former champion. Won her fight, even though I feel like lady she was fighting, Marina Rodriguez, is actually putting in work and giving her the business. Like Carla Esparza was more damaged at the end of the fight. She just had a much more consistent performance throughout. But moving on to like the heavy dudes. Okay, so Fabricio Verdum made Alex Gustafsson tap out with an armbar of all things. Now, Alexander Gustafsson, if you guys don't know, fought arguably the best fighter to ever do it, John Jones, twice. And a lot of people felt like he actually won the first fight because it went to a decision. There was no like knockout or anything. And then in the second fight, he got knocked the fuck out. But there are a lot of people like within the MMA world and in the UFC that feel like if Gustafsson was in a different timeline where John Jones wasn't there or DC wasn't there, he would probably be one of the best in the world. And because he's such a huge dude, like going up to heavyweight isn't that big of a deal for him, or at least it didn't seem like. Like I like to follow a lot of the interviews with all the fighters, and he seemed very calm and very confident going into this fight. I even have it written down. I think it's on Twitter. You can even see that I thought Gustafsson was gonna knock out Verdum, but yo, bro, you can't knock out these old dudes. You can't count out these old dudes. I'm more than positive you can knock them out, but I'm saying you can't count them out because their experience and their fight IQ and how well in shape they actually are. Like Verdum, he wasn't looking good the last fight, I'll tell you that much. He was not looking in shape at all, but this time he came back to like pretty much what we're used to seeing him as, and he beat one of the craziest prospects for a heavyweight. But that doesn't make me feel like Gustafsson is done. I think it sucks to debut that way in a new weight class. And actually, we've seen it a couple times where people have moved weight classes and it just doesn't go well in their debut. But I think he's going to have a long staying power within this weight class. And I do feel like his career isn't over. And he might even, gun for the title. I can definitely see him becoming a champion. So continuing this stacked as fuck fight night card, Shogun Rua fought Little Nog, excuse me. Lil Nog. So Lil Nog and Shogun duked it out again for the third time. And I genuinely feel Little Nog's hands were better than Shogun's. I think he won the fight, but they gave it to Shogun anyway. And when you think about it, I mean, he was on a pretty decent win streak. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but they were like, yo, he might make a run for champion type deal. So he's still not out of the game for sure. But that was Little Nog's retirement fight, which made me really sad because like when you think about the Nogueira brothers, I mean, that's just straight up MMA royalty. So for them to not give it to my boy Lil Nog, it kind of made me sad. But, for a scrap between two older veterans, between two dudes who had already given us some great fights, I was thoroughly entertained by their performances, and I was very much grateful that we got to see that happen, especially on an undercard, especially as a co-main event. But moving on to the main event, flipping Whitaker and Darren Till. Oh man, these guys snapped, man. It was to just say what everybody else has been saying all over the place. It was a chess match of strikers. Robert Whitaker won simply because he did more of the quote unquote mixing of his martial arts. He was going for takedowns, he was doing kicks, he was doing other stuff. And Darren Till was hitting him hard. Like Darren Till was doing work. But Whitaker just showed his championship level IQ in the ring. And I know that this is going to be run backs at some point. Like they definitely are going to have a rematch. Not right away, but I can definitely see it happening like maybe next year or the year after type deal. And that's because the fight was just so damn good and it was so close like all the way throughout. Like Whitaker did start to pull away like a couple rounds here and there, but Darren Till is no joke. He is no slouch. He only has 3 losses or something like that, right? If I'm not mistaken, he might have 4, but he hasn't he hasn't fought like bad peeps at all. He is definitely world class, and despite coming off a couple losses, I don't want to count him out. I don't want to not see him. I mean, he's a good fighter. He's got an awesome personality, and he's young. We'll see where he ends up. And Whitaker's pretty young too. I don't think he's past 30 yet, and he can obviously brawl. He can obviously strike, and he can mix it up. Before I even knew who he was, I had only seen him fight people that I knew, and I was always like, oh yeah, the other guy's gonna win because I know that name, and he would knock dudes out, you get me? And this was on his way to becoming the middleweight champion. So when he fought Adesanya for the championship, I was like, dude, there's no way Adesanya is gonna be able to do this. Like, yeah, he had a dope fight with Gastelum that was like a complete and utter slugfest, and then he had literally just come off of that performance with Silva and beating flipping Anderson Silva. But just how tough and like how much work Whitaker does, I didn't think he was gonna lose, and here we are. You know what I mean? Like talking about it. In case you guys don't know, Israel Adesanya is the current middleweight champion. He's going to be fighting Paulo Costa next, but they haven't made it an official decision yet, or they haven't announced it officially yet. It's definitely going to happen though, because during like one of the fight press conferences, they were talking to Dana White, the owner of the UFC and the dude who puts all the fights together. Some reporter's question was something along the lines of like, oh, so when is Costa fighting Izzy or whatever it is, something along those lines, and he's like, that fight will happen. He's like, wait, did we announce that yet? He was like, he was just making sure that he was on top of like whatever press coverage was there, right? And I just thought that was super funny because he's on top of it. He's a beast about that. But we know that fight is going to happen, and I'm excited as hell. Damn, dude, I need to stop saying excited and feel. And I don't know. We'll go through the podcast at some point and just tally all of my speaking mannerisms. I can't even talk right, but I'm gonna have to because there's like so much more UFC to talk about. And think about it, dude. I was gonna do the prelims as well as the main cards, but there's just way too much. You get me? So moving on to, I don't know if it was the following week or a couple weeks after, but like Brunson versus Shabazian. That was a cool fight. That was last week actually. Come to think of it, it wasn't that long ago. I didn't know many of the people on the card, and honestly, I only knew Derek Brunson. The only reason I wanted to watch the fight is because I heard that this Edmund Shabazian kid was going through the ranks, was up and coming, like doing a lot of work, and he was also the judo partner for Ronda Rousey. So again, just filling in the blanks, if you guys don't know who Ronda Rousey was, she was a huge deal a couple years ago because she was doing hella work within the women's MMA world, but she kind of fell off the deep end, had a couple really tough losses, and had way too many eyes on her. I mean, like, she was a huge star for a little bit, you get me? She definitely made her money, she definitely made her mark, but it kind of, like, disheveled and unwound, and she's where she's at now, which is not fighting. Well, anyway, to start off the card, they did a fight between these two dudes called Lando Venata and Bobby Green. Apparently it was a rematch, and apparently their first fight was a lot closer. It was a slugfest like this one, but it was a lot closer of a slugfest. I was excited for that fight simply because of how they built a little narrative right before it, you get me? I was more kind of like just tuning in, and I was like, okay, cool, this is the card, we're starting off the night. And then they talked about how they had like this bad blood, like this beef with each other, and it was fun, especially because right before they were going to fight, there was supposed to be another one, and then they ended up canceling it or whatever, because like one of the dudes ended up fainting before they could walk into the ring, and the sports commission's commission or whatever that organization wasn't going to let that fight happen after having one of the fighters faint before even getting into the ring. Because it's like, what if there was something going on with his head, with his brain? They're just gonna like send him out there, be like, yo, hey, get your head hit a crap ton of times after fainting, which definitely has nothing to do with your brains. I mean, it might not. It could have been like nerves. It could have been him not getting enough air. It could have been a bunch of stuff. He wanted the fight to go on. His corner wanted the fight to go on. They were arguing, like, they showed that with the cameras and stuff. But they definitely made the right decision. I don't feel like people should be fighting if they're 100%. But, going back to Bobby Green and the Venata fight, Bobby Green started pulling away toward the middle and the end of the fight. He was just doing more work, landing more shots. It was a lot more fluid, I guess you could say. But still landing like really hard, and that other guy just couldn't keep up. It was fun to start the night. I didn't know them before, but I know both of them now. The fight after was Vicente Luque. I don't know who Randy Brown is. I apologize. You're super tall though, dude. Randy Brown is a really, really tall fighter. He's got a pretty decent score right now. But Vicente Luque is an up and comer for the welterweight, and it looks insane every time. He looks like he's a good slugger, you get me? Like, he had to fight a little bit smarter because of how big this dude was, and he had to attack legs, he had to do certain things. But ended up with the TKO/KO against this guy because he's such a beast and hits so damn hard, man. He's got these powerful ass elbows. He's just like a really well-rounded fighter, and I'm ready to watch this man pummel other men. Moving on, because I want to get to the next card as well, and then we'll talk a little bit about DC and Miocic. On the flyweight co-main event, I guess you could say. I mean, it was a co-main event, right? I mean, it's still a fight night. Joanne Calderwood, which was a runner, is an up-and-comer for the championship, dude. Like, her next fight could have been the champion, which is Valentina Shevchenko, if I'm not mistaken, was submitted by Jennifer Maia. Like, it was so nuts, dude, because like her next fight could have been the champion, but her mindset was to stay active. Her mindset was to want to continue fighting, because what else is a fighter gonna do, right? I very much appreciate the mentality, especially for UFC, because that means more entertainment for me, right? I appreciate the fact that she just wants to be a tough go-getter and finish everybody in the division anyway. That was her mentality. She was like, I'm gonna have to fight these people anyway once I become the champion. But when you do stuff like that, you end up, you might end up getting caught by a damn flippin' armbar, which she was, and it was over pretty quick. I mean, it ended before the first round ended, like literally right before, but it was still a quick fight. It didn't go past it. I'm not gonna lie to you dudes, I might like watching women's MMA or women's UFC over the dudes sometimes, just because how crazy their techniques are and how well they can pull them off type deal. So moving on to Derek Brunson and Shabazian. As much as I like Shabazian, even though I didn't know much about him coming in, and as much as I like Brunson, even though he hadn't been doing all that great coming in, his performance was awesome. The first round was very even. The first round, they were kind of getting shots off each other. You know how it goes. They try to feel each other out within that first round, see what they could land, see what the distance is. It's pretty standard fighting fare, Feel your opponent out for the first round, do work for the next few. And for whatever the heck reason, Shabazian just wasn't doing as much the second round. He got caught a couple of times, and flipping Brunson, man, he's got these hands, dude. It could have been stopped at the end of the second round, at least I think so, because he knocked Shabazian down crazy style. And they had maybe about like 10 seconds left, and Shabazian was like, all right, cool, I'm gonna breathe here. I'm going to take my time and just, ride the last of this round out. But Brunson was like, nah, I'm not going to let you do that, and fucking hit the hell out of, just gave him a hard as fuck right hand. And he was knocked down at the end of the round. I thought that the fight was over then too. I thought that was it, but they didn't end it. It was so close to the end of the round that they allowed it to go into the next one, but you could tell instantly that this poor kid, I mean, he's younger, so I get it, but this kid was done for. You could tell his whole demeanor changed from wanting to be in there, from wanting to scrap, to being very on the edges of the fence, being very sluggish. I thought his corner might have thrown in the towel. I thought his corner wasn't going to let him fight after what they had seen at the end of the second round, but they let it go on, and it wasn't even too long. It was about like 30 seconds into the third round that he got the TKO, as in Derek Brunson got the TKO. So that was hella dope because we learned that Brunson is definitely not out yet. We cannot count him out, and we can't even just call him a gatekeeper anymore because he beat one of these awesome up-and-coming prospect for the middleweight division. Okay, finally, bro, we are on the last card here. I will digress from talking UFC here in a little bit, and I've said this on Twitter. I'm thinking about starting another podcast or some sort of content creation that has to do with UFC and MMA in general, because it's such a part of what I consume content-wise that it's hard for me to not talk about it. In a podcast that's supposed to be about video games and movies, and I didn't even talk about watching Lord of the Rings again. I didn't talk about working out extra hard and starting keto, but that's gonna be fun for next podcast for sure. I'll have more to talk about it too, and I'll have more time on it, and I can give you more of that experience. But my point of going off on this tangent is that for anyone who does listen to this podcast, thank you for putting up with all of the different aspects of the junk that I do, and thank you for letting me ramble about what I like. So let's go ahead and finish off the podcast with this last card, this most recent one that happened yesterday, actually. So we're all caught up to date with UFC, and we'll be set for DC and Miocic next week and the following week as well. Whatever that is, I know that they have a thing announced. Let's actually go ahead and see it. Yo, Frankie Edgar, man. I don't know who Pedro Munoz is, but yo, Frankie Edgar is a beast. Okay, so again, I did not know who either of these people were within the middleweight class, and when we are talking about the fight night with Derek Lewis and Olenek now, this guy named Benelli Dariush did a spinning back fist knockout at the end of the first round against this guy called Scott Holtzman. Now their fight started pretty even, as many fights do. They were hitting very decent shots on each other, but very quickly this Dariush dude just used a lot of movement, used a lot of his technique, if that makes sense, used a lot of his fight IQ to place these shots perfectly for this Scott Holtzman dude to not be able to recover. It was going down to a walk down. Like the way it was playing out, I definitely knew that this other dude was either going to knock him out or definitely win the fight. And I've seen crazier stuff before, but just the way that this dude was throwing hands at the other guy, there was just no way he was going to catch him with anything. So Dariush does this crazy like 1-2 combo or whatever it is, and does a spinning back fist all crazy style, and he doesn't even hit him with his fist, he doesn't hit him with his elbow, he hits him with the shin, the forearm part of his arm, and knocks the hell out of this dude. And I'm not saying I don't watch MMA for the love of the sport. I'm not saying that I don't watch MMA because I thoroughly enjoy it, but that's why you watch the flippin' UFC, is for finishes like that make you go, oh damn, oh shit. Because that was hella entertaining, to say the very least. That guy was awesome, and I'm hoping we can get him again pretty soon. I want to know what he does with the rest of the peeps. The women's fight this time, unfortunately, wasn't as great. And there usually are, so that's why I'm saying that. It actually reminded me of the Jorge Masvidal and Kamaru Usman fight, because essentially this Yana Kunitskaya kept holding up this woman. Excuse me if I'm mispronouncing this, but Yulia Stoliarenko. It's really hard to say these people's names. They're crazy. It's from all over the world, you know what I mean? But Yana kept holding this other chick up against the fence, and essentially that's all she could do, because the Stoliarenko cat kept trying to jump on top of Yana, quite literally. Every time she would hold her up against the fence, she would try to like go in for an over-the-top guillotine type deal and choke her out, but that was the only move that they kept going back to. There was cool little bouts of sparring here and there, or not sparring, but striking here and there, but even then, Yana was doing work. So, I honestly hate to say it, but it was kind of a boring fight. It was a one-sided fight. Even more so than the George Masvidal fight. But moving on to the middleweight, Darren Stewart and Maki Pitolo. Okay, so this dude Pitolo is actually looking great at the very beginning of the fight. He's doing work. He's landing some strikes. He's mixing it up. But then he makes the mistake of going for a takedown at the exact same time Darren Stewart's arm was right there perfectly for a guillotine, and literally just like that, I can't even snap correctly, damn dude, the fight was over. It only lasted a couple of minutes. It looked like a very nasty guillotine. It was a sick with it choke, and if I'm not mistaken, that guy, Darren Stewart, got a bonus for it. So that was pretty fun. I like that there were a few finishes for the night, because as much as I also enjoy the excitement and anticipation of a decision victory, I love the clear-cut winner thing as well, where there's no doubt whatsoever the fight was stopped because you were that much better than the other person. And I'm not sure that was the case with Pitolo and Stewart here, because I think if the fight had gone on longer, if Pitolo had gotten out of the guillotine, it might not have been the same outcome. Moving on to Chris Weidman's middleweight debut once again. He actually started at middleweight and fought Silva twice, as in Anderson Silva, as in the Spider Anderson Silva, twice, and beat him twice, but had gone up to light heavyweight. And as much as I like Chris Weidman, dude had not gotten a win since 2017. He said it himself in the press conference afterwards too, and he was very upset with his performance against this guy named Omari Akhmedov. I don't know who Omari Akhmedov is, but he was ranked number 11 in the middleweight division, and I think Chris Weidman just took that spot. And I can't necessarily say I disagree with Weidman either. I've seen him fight better. He has seen himself fight better. He was saying that he may not have been as better shape, or not even better shape, he may not have been prepared in the sense of the fight not going the way he planned it out to. So he would try to go for takedowns, and I'm not trying to make excuses for him, and I'm not trying to buy his excuses, but what he was saying, that every time he would try to do something, it was just in an awkward position, and he didn't end up having the fight he wanted. And you can definitely tell. He has been in better shape before. He has been, not necessarily shape as in going for longer and doing work that way. It's just he's a better fighter than whatever performance we got yesterday. But power to him. Hopefully he keeps on fighting. I definitely don't want to not see him around, and we'll see how well he does now in middleweight. And now on to the main event. The main event. How do you even say something like that? I was going to try to say it like Bruce Buffer, but I don't want to get copyrighted at all. And I would say it like, what's his name? Joe Rodriguez or Martinez or something like that. It's not even so much that I don't like the guy. Bruce Buffer just does it that much better. He is so much better at announcing and hyping everybody up for a fight. But we got what's his face instead. So Derek Lewis kind of did not look all that great at the first round. He had landed a few decent shots, I would say, but was very much getting worked on by Alexei Olenek. He was on his back. He was getting almost choked out. He was getting cranked real hard on his neck. Olenek was moving freely back and forth to where he would have good top control, and maybe I'm the only one, but I thought after that first round it was very much going to be Olenek's fight. And I didn't even know, but Derek Lewis is a blue belt in I don't know if it's judo or jiu-jitsu. I think it's BJJ, but he's a blue belt, and it kind of showed in the ring. He did lay back a lot. He did have a flat back a lot and let this guy just squeeze on him. But he did have the know-how. He did have a sense of knowing how to defend against Olenek. And if you guys don't know Olenek or Derek Lewis, you probably don't know either of these fighters. I'm talking to a bunch of gamers. Well, anyway, Derek Lewis, the Black Beast, is a beast, a fucking monster. He knows how to fight hard. He hits really hard, and he's funny as hell. He's got one of those presences where everything he does is hilarious, and all of his post-fight press conferences are highlight-worthy, to say the very least. Because even after this one, during the press conference, he's like, Monster didn't sponsor me, so hey, bang, energy drink if you guys want to, holler at me type deal. He's that type of guy, and it's really hard to not like Derek Lewis. But getting back to the fight, after that first round, Olenek definitely seemed in better shape and better spirits. But literally right at the beginning of the first round, Derek Lewis just rocks the fuck out of him and knocks him out, man. Setting the heavyweight record for the most knockouts. And Olenek's no joke, dude. This guy has 59 wins. And most, like a shit ton of them are by submission. So for Derek Lewis to wait it out in a scarf hold for practically 3 minutes and then come back and knock the hell out of the guy who did it to him, I honestly have nothing but props. And I'm excited to see whether or not he does fight Curtis Blades. He did call him out at the end of that conference. But there's no doubt Derek Lewis is a flippin' monster. He is that beast for sure. So that does it for UFC. Probably at this point I'd be talking about TV shows and whatnot. And we could go for longer. I mean, there's actually no time limit for the podcast. I can talk for as long as I want to, but I kind of don't want to now. I'm going to go ahead and jot this down for next week. We'll definitely talk about workouts. We'll definitely talk about keto. We'll talk about like Outward and a couple of the other games I've been playing. There's also a couple movies I've been watching. I mean, like that American Pickle movie with Seth Rogen came out. I mean, I got a lot more to talk about. It's just UFC is so damn fun to recap, you feel? But that's going to go ahead and do it for this episode of the Punched Podcast. Thank you guys so damn much for listening all the way through to the end. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe if you're listening on YouTube, or support whatever it is on whichever platform you're listening to this on. You can definitely find me over on twitch.tv/Pika_punch. You can find me at Twitter at Pika_punch. Or you could follow the podcast itself over there on Twitter at Podcast Punched. These are always a blast, and thanks again. I'll see you guys in the next one.